It's about the quarter mark of the NHL season, so you know what that means. Let's look ahead to the playoffs. Well, no, okay, not quite that, but I did want to play a fun game. Because I find the first few weeks, the first month or so of the season, we look at all the stats and we just kind of ignore them because, they're not going to stay that way. Guys who had a hot start will probably slow down, guys who had a cold start will probably heat up, and teams the exact same thing. And what gets ignored the most, because there's so much hockey left to play this season, are the standings. Just for fun, you want to see what the playoff matchups would be today? Let's start in the West. First matchup, alright, you got the top division leading team in the West against the bottom wildcard team in the West. Alright, that's always a mismatch. Ugh, who's that? It would be the central leading Dallas Stars against the bottom wildcard team, the Chicago Blackhawks. Just stop what you're doing and pray for Corey Crawford, play for Antti Niemi or Kari Lehtinen, whichever one the Stars decide to use. There's going to be no defense in that series. That's not true. Both teams have amazing defensemen, John Klingberg, Duncan Keith, but holy mackerel, is that going to be an offensively crazy series. And Dallas is crushing it. They're crushing it in the Central Division, crushing it in the Western Conference. They have 34 points. No other team in the West even has 30, and yet, are they the underdogs in this series? It's Chicago, man. It's just Chicago. It does not matter what place they're in. Then you get the other division leader, which would be the San Jose Sharks, against the other wildcard team, the Nashville Predators at the moment. And this could be an amazingly even series because right now only 1 point separates those teams. In fact, Nashville's only 1 point back, but they've played 2 fewer games than San Jose. Now this is a different one in net because you got a guy like Pekka Rinne. He's so well established. He's had so much longevity in the NHL, stopping pucks. The guy could win series on his own. Series is maybe plural. And then you get Martin Jones, who has looked so impressive in stretches for San Jose, but it's his first year as an NHL starting goalie. Baptism by fire, just get thrust right into a playoff series. Honestly, not sure who I like in that one. I might like Nashville. And then the 2 divisional series in the West are great because they have a little bit of hate in each of them. In the Central, it's a rematch between the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. Every year is supposed to be the St. Louis Blues year. Every year, this is the year they finally take it. Oh man, just wait until they get a score, and then they go out and they get Tarasenko, and the same results. They can't get it done come playoff time. The X factor here, weirdly, could be home ice. Minnesota's 8-1 at home, just dynamite. 3-4-3 on the road, though. And then in the Pacific, I like this one. I like this one a lot. LA taking on Vancouver. The playoffs just aren't as fun without the Vancouver Canucks involved. Because when they were just smashing teams for at least half a decade, winning President's Trophy after President's Trophy, they ticked a lot of teams off. Big rivalry with LA, big rivalry with Chicago, and the Stanley Cup Final from 2011 against the Bruins is still, that's probably the most talked about Stanley Cup Final of the last decade. Can the Canucks get their revenge over the suddenly surging Kings? Remember when the Kings had a slow start and we all laughed at them? We probably shouldn't have done that. Now we move to the East. When it comes to the division leaders, there is a much wider gap in the East than there is in the West. Montreal has 34 points, and they would be taking on the New York Islanders, who only have 23. The Rangers lead the Metropolitan with 32 points, and they would also be taking on a team with 23 points, the New Jersey Devils. I mean, forget the Habs and Islanders for a sec. Let's just take a minute to rejoice that the Rangers and Devils will be playing each other in a playoff series. I mean, there's a storyline of Henrik Lundqvist versus Corey Schneider, two of the NHL's best goalies right now, certainly top 10. Unbelievable. But at the heart of a rivalry, the fan bases need to hate each other. And Rangers fans and Devils fans, not fans of each other. Who wins that series? The answer's simple. Anybody who likes watching chippy hockey. Now, for the Canadiens against the New York Islanders, they actually just played recently. They played on Sunday. Montreal won 4-2. And the talk of the game was P.K. Subban's relationship with John Tavares. They were childhood friends, and now look at them. They're superstars. Tavares is a superstar forward, Subban a superstar defender. And yeah, that's a focal point. That's something you should focus on in the series. But you know who I'm looking at? The matchup in net between Carey Price and Yaroslav Halak. Because some of you youngins might not remember, and some of you people who do remember might not like to admit it, but there was a time where we talked about Yaroslav Halak like he was better and was always going to be better than Carey Price. Which, no, not at all. In the Atlantic, not a crazy matchup so far. Ottawa would be taking on Detroit, and I guess the most important part there is Detroit makes the playoffs again! And maybe more surprisingly, or not, Ottawa makes the playoffs again. Because Ottawa was such a difficult team to read coming into the season. They were so bad at the beginning of last season and so unreal during the back half Easily the best team in the NHL back half of the season. It says here that the Senators would basically have to win every game to make the playoffs. Yeah, like that's gonna happen. Anyway, call up Hammond, see what he's got. And last but not least, alright, we already got the rivalry between the Rangers and the Devils. Alright, that's good. Alright, we got the rivalry between the Kings and the Canucks. Alright, that's pretty good too. Do you know what the final series would be? The Metropolitan Series would be in the East. The Pittsburgh Penguins against the Washington Capitals. I don't care what you say, I don't care how hot they are, how cold they are. If Sidney Crosby is playing Alex Ovechkin, you're watching that game. Also, it would be a rare Phil Kessel in the playoff sighting. And when the Hulk Beast reaches playoff form, he's hard to beat, but holy smokes has Marc-Andre Fleury been unreal. It's the offense that needs to pick it up in Pittsburgh. But as tantalizing as some of these series are so far, it's November. Tampa Bay is tied for a wild card spot in the East, but they're technically not even in the playoffs right now. In the West, you got Winnipeg, who's got 22 points in the Central Division. They're not even in a wild card spot right now. Meanwhile, the Canucks also have 22 points, and they're third in the Pacific. Not to mention the Phoenix Coyotes lurking in the background, and oh yeah, the Anaheim Ducks aren't abysmal anymore. And the Columbus Blue Jackets are last place in the East. They're only 7 points back of a playoff spot. And Edmonton and Colorado are tied for last place in the West, and they're only 7 points back. Look, I already mentioned the Hamburglar. Anything can happen. What do you think? How intact is the current playoff picture gonna stay? What teams do you think will be playing each other in the playoffs? And who do you think will surprise? See, I did an entire video without mentioning the Leafs. Oh!